want to thank the candidates for being here, taking the time to join us and talk to the people of Chinham. I appreciate that it was all quite last minute, but I think it's going to be really useful for people to know who is standing and what you're standing for. So first of all, let's just welcome who we have today. We've got Phil Heath, who is from Hampshire Independence, Jonathan Jenkin from the Green Party, Jenny Vore, who is representing the Conservatives, and Grant Donohoe, who is representing the Labour candidates who can't be here today. It's worth noting that the parish council meeting in Chinham was moved to today unexpectedly, which meant that some people weren't able to make it. We invited one representative from each party at borough level, and we also invited separately the 4 county candidates, although they weren't all able to make it. A reminder to everyone who's voting that on Thursday, we're going to be asked to vote for 3 borough councillors from a choice of 11 candidates, for 1 county councillor from a choice of 4 candidates, and for the police and crime commissioner. All candidates that we invited are either attending, have sent a representative, or have provided a statement, with the exception of the Lib Dem candidate Stephen Whitechurch, who unfortunately we weren't able to get hold of, and it's possible that despite our best efforts, he didn't receive our invitation. We aren't sure, but we know that he has made a statement in the media, and we will be sharing that on our page as well, a link to that so that people can hear from him as well. Before we hear from the candidates that we have with us today, Shane and I are going to begin by reading some statements from those who weren't able to attend. And the first of those is from Francesca Maritan, who is the county councillor candidate for the Liberal Democrats. Francesca says, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide a statement to this event, and I'm sorry I'm unable to attend in person. I retired in 2019 after a varied career, initially in IT and telecoms, then later in financial services, where I was a risk director and money laundering reporting officer. I have run 2 successful consultancy businesses where I provided operational risk management, compliance and regulatory advice. I believe this experience will be valuable in the county councillor role. I relocated to Old Basing from West London in 2018 and immersed myself in community projects. I've been a registered street champion since the start of lockdown, providing support to neighbours in need of shopping, picking up prescriptions, and on one occasion fixing a mobility chair. I'm registered with Basingstoke Voluntary Action and a guide dog fosterer for Guide Dogs for the Blind. I'm also involved in a research project looking into the history of the Boys on the Cross in St Mary's Churchyard. If elected, I plan to run a traditional surgery where, when permitted, I can meet face-to-face with residents to discuss their concerns. I will also keep in touch using focus leaflets and social media. On my Facebook page, you will see how, alongside the Lib Dem team, I have been supporting the community in the borough in a variety of casework. Hampshire has quite rightly declared a climate emergency, and I have personally signed the pledge to support the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. These 2 actions will underpin every decision I make and will inform every motion I propose. In Loddon, we need to preserve our local services and our areas. Though Basingstoke Town Centre is nearby, we are our own communities and we need local services that are accessible to all. I absolutely believe we need to bring greater balance into our political landscape in order to achieve the best outcomes for all residents. Ultimately, I will fight hard to ensure that you have a voice in decisions and activities, as that's the only reason you will have elected me to represent you." And that was a statement from Francesca Maritan, the Lib Dem candidate for county councillor. I will pass you over to Shane now, who's going to read a statement from Elaine Still, who is the Conservative candidate for county councillor.
Okay. Sorry, lost my place. Okay, I'm reading for Elaine Still, the county Conservative councillor. Elaine has been your candidate councillor for 16 years. One of the duties I take seriously is to keep in touch with the parish councils, and unfortunately tonight's hustings clashes with the annual meeting of Chinham Parish Council, which is why I can't be with you in person. I am grateful that the organizers has offered to read the statement for me. I've held many senior positions on the county, including in 2018, being chairman of the county council, a role that gave me the opportunity to see at firsthand how Hampshire's many communities work to make this such a fine place in which to live. I like to think that I bring caring approach to the role, matched by experience, and these enable me to be successful in representing you effectively. There are many important challenges facing us in the Loudoun division and in Basingstoke, not least the environment and climate change. I fully support the county's council's drive to carbon neutrality. The Borough Council is working on the next level plan, and that means we will need to work together and fight to protect our green fields. That partnership approach is important to me, and I believe to you as well. Some issues simply transcend politics. I'm interested in the arts and am pleased to sit as an observer on the board of the Anvil Trust. Quality of life issues too often get overlooked. If I am reelected, I will continue to work for everyone in the Loudoun division. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Shane. And I know everyone's keen to hear from the candidates we have today, but I'm going to read one more statement. This is from Joe Walk, the independent candidate for Chinham Ward as a borough councillor. It has been several years since I last stood for election in Chinham Ward, and we have the incredible number of 11 candidates standing in our ward at this borough council election. With other elections also taking place, I would like to encourage residents to please come out and vote on Thursday. I have now lived in Chinham for over 25 years, and most of my life has been spent within the bounds of Basingstoke and Deane, so I have much local knowledge and experience to draw upon if elected. Running a business, I can fully appreciate the challenges ahead for local companies and residents as we all adjust to the impacts of the COVID pandemic and the fast changes being made. With regards to environment and sustainability, most of us are in agreement that swifter and meaningful action will be needed in response to climate matters. Attention must be given to methods of transport and also the future heating needs of the borough. As gas boilers cease to be allowed in new builds, wider change will likely follow. With no political group to tell me how to vote in the council chambers, you can be assured that I will represent the best interests of Chinham Ward on these issues and all others at all times. Besides my election leaflet, I do have a website up and running, which is jowalke.co.uk. That's JOWALKE.co.uk, covering more of this election's hot topics. Doubtless, the only other literature you may have seen in this election belongs to our local Conservatives. However, the claim in their leaflet that Chinham Conservative councillors allocated to developer contributions seems to overlook council processes and any work done by others in bringing these funds to our ward. The government requires a new development plan for Basingstoke, with even more greenfield sites surrounding our area highlighted for inclusion. When Conservatives say in their same leaflet that they ensured development at Sherfield Hill Farm was withdrawn, is that what happened? And can we be sure they do not mean that the building there has merely been delayed? I believe that it is time for some change here in Chinham and Basingstoke. It can only happen if you choose to vote for your truly independent local candidate. Please place a vote for me on May the 6th. Thank you. And that statement was from Joe Walk, the independent candidate in Chinham Ward. Okay, so now I'm going to hand you over to Shane, who will begin the questioning of the candidates who I'm so glad we have here today. Thank you.
Louise, one little hiccup here. It looks like there's an issue connecting to Chinham Community Notice Board. So I've streamed it live to the Friends of Chinham Library. So.
Okay, great thinking, quick thinking, Shane. Well done. Obviously, we can upload the video when it's all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if nothing else, we haven't lost anything because I have the video recording at the same time. So, so anyway, there might be a hiccup, and I've just notified Mark. So.
Okay, brilliant.
Okay, sorry, I've been working in the background to get that going. So let me get back to my notes here. As always, it's called the demo effect. I don't know how many times you've seen this on anything. So, all right. So we have, okay. So we're going to have the introductions from the candidates. It looks like here we're going to start off with Phil Heath, and everyone has 2 minutes. And as you can see, can everyone see the timer? It'll change to a time when I start it off. So. All right, so Phil, you're up first, and I will start the timer now.
Yeah, thanks for setting this up. I'm a care worker and have been working on the front line during the whole of the pandemic. But my history goes back quite a way, in that I used to be a senior account executive in the city. I was a borough and county councillor for many years, I chaired planning and social adult care. I haven't got a direct link to Chinham, but I was heavily involved in the consultation process for the last waste management strategy, which introduced the incinerator, material recovery facilities and recycling centres. And I took 2 busloads of residents into London to see an incinerator that was working at the time, and to actually meet and consult with local residents to get their views, which I thought at the time was more important than listening to the operators. Hampshire Independent Group is merely a support mechanism to try and bring independence in some line with what political parties can do. Chinham's always had, up until a few years ago, very successful independent councillor, but he was overwhelmed by the big parties, and that's why he disappeared. I think what we need is independence working within the community and working within the council. And as a group, we've got 46 candidates across Hampshire, including a PCC candidate. So that's who I am.
Okay, thank you, Philip. And next on the list, we are going to have Jonathan. So I will start the timer now.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Jenkin. I'm representing the Green Party. My connection to Chinham is that I live here. I moved here after university and I made my home here. I will be representing myself, Stephen Philpotts, Richard Musson, who are my fellow ward candidates. In my opinion, the greatest issue facing us in Chinham is complicity, cuts, and the loss of community, overdevelopment and underfunding. We're very lucky to live in this part of Basingstoke in Hampshire in England. Let's not give in to the temptation of complicity and continue to push for a better community and with it a better world. I would like these hustings to convey our principles and our values as a party, but most importantly, I'd like this debate to reflect on what we can achieve for each other. I would wholeheartedly ask you not to consider your individual interests, but to make it the effort and consider everybody's interests, because I believe that only with collective action can we move forward to a more united, greener and better community. Thank you for joining us tonight, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. All right. And so next on the list, we are going to have Jenny, and I will start the timer now. Jenny, you're on mute.
That helps, doesn't it? Thanks, Shane. Okay, my name is Jenny Vaux, and I'm representing the 3 Conservative borough councillors standing for election in the Chinham ward. We all live in the ward, Laura Edwards in North Binfields, Paul Miller in Chinham itself, and I live in Shilford Park. We are all deeply attached to our communities and the area. Laura was born here, Paul and I are parish councillors, and we have many connections with local groups and charities. We are passionate about doing what we can to keep the ward an attractive and safe place to live, with good local facilities and open spaces to enjoy. We are all experienced borough councillors and bring different backgrounds, knowledge and skills to our roles. For example, Paul has 12 years focusing on planning issues in the borough. Laura has a law degree, is an excellent digital communicator and very good at resolving issues. My background is in the NHS and social housing, with many years volunteering in mental health and homelessness services. Above all, we bring our own personal life experiences to being borough councillors, working, raising children, accessing health services, looking after elderly parents, volunteering and being part of local sports, arts and charities. The biggest issue that we hear from residents on the doorsteps is that we must ensure new housing developments nearby come with the right infrastructure and services, minimising any detrimental impacts on communities, particularly schools, doctors and dentists. The second big issue raised is delivering our comprehensive plan to reduce our carbon footprint and protect our environment. Other issues include tackling the volume of traffic causing congestion and pollution locally finding ways of addressing parking in some parts of the ward and speeding traffic in residential areas. We believe that we can offer a strong united voice representing people living in the Chinham ward. Together, we can address these issues and get things done. Thank you. And I'm sorry I overran a little bit there.
No, it's okay. You were late with the mute. So thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
And so next on the list, we have Dave Watson, who cannot be with us tonight. So next is going to be Grant. And Grant, I'll start the timer now. You're on mute, Grant.
I'm off, yeah. So thanks for organising this and welcome to everybody who's watching. I'm here to represent the Labour Party and to represent Nigel Waldridge and Maria French, who are the two candidates in your ward, and Mike Barkham, who is the candidate for the County Council, and Tony Bundy, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner. So I come from the neighbouring ward of Popley, where I am the candidate, but I'm going to speak for the Labour team in the council, and I think one of the strengths of voting for the Labour candidates in Chinham will be that you are plugging them into a team. I think, as was mentioned earlier, independents can tend to get a little bit overwhelmed. So I think if you're looking for an alternative voice to the Conservatives in Chinham, then it needs to be the Labour Party, which would bring with it a sort of a strong team in the council to represent Chinham. So what are the issues in Chinham? Well, the other candidates have said them and I could repeat them, and we all agree what the issues are. We all agree that it's all about climate change and biodiversity and parking and development and lots of houses where some people don't necessarily want them. The real issue is, how do you solve that? And I think it's a 4-stage plan. It's consult with residents, it's plan, and it's to have an actual long-term strategy, and then it's to invest. And I think that where the current Conservative Council falls down is on all 4 of those, really. I don't think that they consult enough. I don't think they plan, and I don't think they've got a clear long-term strategy. But above all, they don't invest in the communities that they're there to serve. And they'll give away money to 8.9 million, I think it was, to people like Eli Lilly, where they should be using the money that comes from developments, the developer money, to invest in the communities. And I don't think they're doing that. So the issues are things we're probably all going to agree on.
And we're over on time, Grant. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move to the questions, and we're going to go. I'll just call them out one time. We have a list here, but I'll just call them out as we go. And these will be set up for a minute and a half. And let me adjust my timer here. And okay. All right. And so first one is going to be Jenny. And the question is, would you be prepared to speak out openly against cuts from central government that are affecting our area?
Thank you, Shane. Yes, we do speak out as councillors against cuts from central government that affect the Chinham ward. For example, we lobbied in the Borough Council in this year's public consultation on the budget about elements we felt would detrimentally affect Chinham residents, such as disabled parking charges, which were removed. The Borough Cabinet speaks openly about the impact of national funding cuts at our full council meetings, and the borough's Conservative leadership directly lobbies government on our behalf when we think something is wrong. For example, our leader, Councillor Ken Rattigan, has lobbied the Secretary of State for Housing, Robert Jenrick, for more control of our local budgets and to be fair to residents in southern counties in the rebalancing of the economy with the north. As a united local Conservative voice, we all worked very hard on resisting the closure of the Chinham Library, and together with the massive community response, the library has remained open. We care about arts in the borough for our well-being and to bring people into the area. We are still one of the biggest investors in arts and culture across the whole country, the largest district council contributor to the Hampshire Cultural Trust, which provides Milestones, the Willis and Basing House. The borough runs the Basingstoke Festival every year and supports smaller organisations such as Proteus Creation Space in the town centre. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Okay, and next we have Jonathan. Let me restart the timer here. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I'd be prepared to fight for a sustainable future for our community. I'd also like to talk about the unpopular council spending as well. It's about understanding why this is the case and having an open dialogue about it. Saving a library by not cutting it isn't really saving it. Why was it being cut in the first place? Another example is the Anvil. It's having something like the Anvil, using it, promoting it, making it a normal part of our lives, to enjoy the arts that are around us. We should be helping it to flourish, and we should be not cutting out its heart like the Tory government and our Tory friends. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Johnny. And so next so Dave's not with us. So Grant, you are next, and I will start the timer. And you're on mute.
So yeah, as Jonathan said, you don't sort of save Chinham Library by stopping your own team from closing it. It was your own team that wanted to close it in the first place, and it's about conservative values. They don't invest. They don't have a strong feel for leisure in Basingstoke. The Anvil, the leisure facilities, the aquadromes being driven into the ground, ice in Basingstoke is not working. There's a whole long list. Sure Start Centres are massively important to the community. There's only one credible alternative voice to the Conservatives, I'm afraid, and that is a Labour team on the council. The Green Party have got many good things to say, but sadly they don't have the sort of the voice that we've got. So yeah, obviously we will speak out against it, and our councillors do on a regular basis. So yeah, the Conservatives are a captive of their own philosophies. So they may well speak out against it, but they're speaking out against themselves. That doesn't really work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grant. And next on the list, we are going to have Philip, and you're ready.
Yeah, I had a long history of going against the government, and in one particular case, when I was vice chairman of the Fire Authority, I actually went on national television with the Fire Brigades Union supporting their stand against cuts that were going to mean firefighters' wages were going to be severely hampered. So no problem with that. The biggest problem I've got is Hampshire and Basingstoke are the victims of government cuts. They are two of the richest councils across the UK. They have an investment in Manydown that will shortly provide them something like £250 million each. So apart from their reserves, they have very cheap borrowing rates that they could have gone to be paid off very quickly by Manydown profits, and they could have avoided any of the changes. As a care worker, too many of my clients have had their hours cut. They don't allow us to do any cleaning. They have to pay for the cleaning. It is ridiculous. Hampshire and Basingstoke are not victims of council cuts. They're victims of failing to do the right thing.
Okay, thank you, Philip. Okay, so we have on to question number 2. Hampshire County Council and Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council repeatedly cite a lack of funding from central government for its reduction of services, such as cutting the library hours by over a day, drastically reducing arts funding, and removing support services such as Sure Start centers. Yet money is still spent on projects that lack public support. Despite the promise of an end to austerity, these cuts to services continued following the last general election, even before the pandemic. Would you be prepared to speak out openly against cuts from central government that are affecting our area? And this one we are going to start with Grant.
Thank you, Shane. I think we may have just had that question, but I will repeat very briefly what I said earlier. It's about the choices that the Conservatives made. It's not about lack of money, it's about the wrong choices. But I think we've had that question. Have we?
Sorry, Grant, you are correct. That was my mistake. I'm looking at two different documents. Let me go to the next question. Sorry, everyone. We'll put this in the blooper reel. Okay. Chinham Ward has seen significant housing development with thousands of new homes being built and no new schools to support them. As a result, parents in Chinham are being offered schools miles away or being forced to take their siblings to two different schools. Doctors and libraries are seeing a similar lack of investment, resulting in pressure on those services. Would you aim to ensure that the infrastructure is improved before any additional housing is added? And on this one, we will start with Grant. It's back to you again. So let me stop the timer and restart it for you. Go for it.
I believe that around the Chinham area, there are already 900 houses in the plan already, and developers lining up to promote new land banks for development in the future. One of the little technical points that we need to think about is all the development money that comes to the council from developers doesn't seem to be being spent very well. It doesn't seem to be spent in a timely manner. And I think part of that is because the ideas for the spending needs to come from the community. And it goes back to that consultation issue that the council needs a plan. It needs a strategy for development. We know we need new houses, but we've got to build them in a sustainable way. We've got to build them in what I call blended developments. Housing, if it's done the right way, can be as sustainable and environmentally friendly as agriculture. Agriculture is often, look at all this beautiful farmland, which is profoundly sterile. Look at the developments that they've done up in Fleet, where they literally built a housing estate, and it's like a wildlife refuge. It's incredible. But we've got to get that development money out of the council and into the community, and we've got to invest, and spend the money wisely. Infrastructure has got to be put before the housing is agreed.
Okay, thank you, Grant.
5 seconds to spare. I nicked those earlier.
All right, and so now we are going to be on to Johnny, and you are ready.
Absolutely. Being sustainable isn't just about making sure that we recycle the right things. It's about planning for the future, making sure that generations that precede us are thought of. Infrastructure is one of the things that gels a community together. Things like the NHS have been a jewel of our country since its creation, and we need to make sure that we save it. We need to develop and invest in the area, not only building 5-bedroom houses, but building sustainable, manageable developments that add to our community, that don't take away from our community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. And so next we are going to have Philip on to you, and let me start the timer. There we go.
Yeah, thanks. People are misinformed about the money available for infrastructure. Developers who own the land get away with very little in providing money from the development, and certainly not enough for major infrastructure projects. So they love buying up plots of land outside of towns. They get all the benefit, and there's very little comes back. There's an amount goes in for schools, amount for mitigation of certain things, but not enough for major road projects. Going to Manydown, the land is owned by Basingstoke and Hampshire, so therefore they get a double whammy. They get the sale of the land to the developers, and they get infrastructure payments. So large developments like that are much better for Basingstoke. Also, when you look at the office developments in Basingstoke, there's probably still about 1 million square feet of empty office space that could be reused and recycled into housing. And that housing can be for local people and low cost, low rent. So infrastructure is very expensive, and don't be fooled, local developments won't pay for it.
Okay, thank you, Philip. And let me stop this. And Jenny.
Thank you, Shane. So Hampshire County Council is responsible for the provision of schools and education locally. Currently, 90% of children are placed in their first choice of school and 98% in their preferred list of schools. There is an appeals service if parents are not satisfied, and the deadline for the next scholastic year is the 17th of May. Primary health care is the responsibility of the NHS Clinical Commissioning Group. However, Chinham Medical Practice, in collaboration with the CCG and ward councillors, will be moving to larger, more suitable accommodations soon. I am an active community member of the practice's patient participation group, which works well with the practice. All the Conservative candidates actively contributed to the consultation on the reduction of funding to libraries. There were meetings at the Chinham Library, including Maria Miller MP and Councillor Elaine Still, to understand how we could keep the library open. And we continue to work with the library service on its future. Infrastructure requirements in general are identified in the borough's local plan, which is currently in the process of a formal update. The various stakeholders involved include the County Council, highways and utility companies. To improve infrastructure planning in the future, the borough will introduce a developers charter requiring developers to provide the infrastructure needed to support new housing developments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jenny. All right, our next question is, what is your view on the proposed greenfield development around Chinham and Sherfield Park? And we are going to start this one with Phil.
Okay, I think as I said last time, greenfield developments aren't cost effective. They don't provide the infrastructure. They provide profits for developers. And I worked as a consultant on community consultation for developers. So I've seen the budgets. There is no need for those developments when you've got some 15,000 houses planned for the other side of Basingstoke. And as I say, there's enough office space that can be redeveloped brownfield sites, again, on land owned by Basingstoke, that can provide the housing needed. And I have to say, when it comes to things like the libraries, it's no coincidence that Conservative controlled wards kept libraries, Labour controlled ones lost them throughout Hampshire. So I think we have to be very careful on people saying what they've done and when they've done it, because I don't think there was ever any issue over saving Chinham Library.
Okay, thank you, Phil. And next we have Jenny. Oh, you're muted, Jenny.
Sorry, pressed it twice. Do you want to reset your timer?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thanks, Shane. I can't be right to time already. Thanks very much. So our view is that greenfield development has to be proportionate across the borough, have the right infrastructure and not adversely impact on current communities. Simply put, our priorities for allocating development sites are that brownfield sites should be developed first. There should be urban densification in Basingstoke where the local services are. We should be minimising greenfield development overall and particularly in our area. We are pushing for Many Down phases 1 and 2. We agree that Many Down has taken too long and we are pushing for work to start this year. The Conservative administration has played its part as a council in meeting national requirements to provide housing. 10,000 houses have been approved in the last 5 years. However, developers have not built them. The Conservative leadership in the borough is lobbying central government to have greater control of budgets, specifically to have a levy council tax on developers who have permission to build houses but are not building them. This could pay for infrastructure in local areas in advance of the building being completed. This would also deter developers from land banking, sitting on developments until prices are right without any cost to themselves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. And next, we are going to have Johnny, and you're ready.
I think the question was mostly answered by the other candidates. So I'm not going to go over that. And also in the previous question, what I will say though is I think greenfields need to be protected from ourselves. They need to be kept as they are, where they are. We also need to think about the protection of the wildlife and various other lovely sustainable green things. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Johnny. Okay, and Grant, your turn. And you're on mute.
Mute. It's taken. There we go. Am I unmuted now? Great. Yeah. So the Conservatives have been in power for 11 years or more, and now they've suddenly started talking about sorting out developers. They've had 11 years to do it. They haven't done it. So it's like, again, it's a bit of jam tomorrow, I'm afraid. Greenfield sites. The fact is that central government is going to make you build. So yes, it would be nice to use brownfield sites first, of course. But you know, do we want to put everybody in office blocks? The conversion of those office blocks might cost more than building new places. So the key thing is you need joined up government, and you need the schools and the roads to be planned and prepared and thought about in advance of the developments being built. Yeah, developer money isn't going to solve all the problems, but you need joined up government, and you need to make sure that the county council and the local councils and the developers are all working together in order to solve these problems. And I'm afraid that Conservatives have not demonstrated joined up government, either nationally or locally. So you need Labour to do it.
Okay, thank you, Grant. All right, our next question is, residents in the area have reported frequent drug-related activity, speeding, and vehicle theft. Do you feel that these concerns are being taken seriously enough? And we are going to start with Grant again.
Okay, so I'm not muted, thank God. Fundamental principle of the British Constitution, the rule of law. Nobody is above the law, from the Prime Minister when he decorates his flat, down to drivers driving up the A33 or the A30. You've got to enforce the law. That's very difficult to do when you cut policing numbers by 25%. You've lost 400 police officers in Hampshire. This is partly central government cuts. It's partly about choices made by the Conservative administrations in Hampshire. You know, there was a lot of fuss about an incident that happened recently where the police were criticised for not doing enough. Well, if you're just one of 2 police officers that rocks up to an incident like that, and you're undermanned, understaffed, and you haven't got the backup, maybe that's a bit of an explanation. So you need to be funding police officers to be able to do the job. You need enough police officers to do the job. You need to look at, again, back to consultation, talk about what residents' priorities are. I've had my own car broken into. It's traumatic, actually. It's very upsetting. So county lines on drugs. As a teacher, we get children who are victims of this. You've got cookering. It does come back to one thing. We've got the laws. We need the police. We need enough police to do the job. And that, again, is about investing in the country, rebuilding the fabric of society, not the fabric of the Prime Minister's flat.
Thank you. Okay, and Philip.
Yeah, this is a perennial thing. Say, I was on the police authority and used to get regular reports. I was actually at an incident in Basingstoke in 2003 where 3 police officers turned up and said this was 9 o'clock at night. And they said, well, you've got half the available force in Basingstoke. And that was during the good days before police cuts. So if you're going to increase police numbers, you've got to do it by a considerable number. The biggest problem always was you can arrest these people. Sentencing was never good enough. There was no rehabilitation, and adult social care didn't have any funding to provide safe places for drug addicts to avoid being hounded by the pushers. In fact, I look after some alcoholics at the moment who, when they're asked to move, have been moved opposite pubs and off licenses. I mean, it's crazy. There needs to be joined up thinking between housing associations, between the police, between adult social care and youth care. Without those, you're never going to tackle any of these crimes, because a lot of the other incidents are due to habits.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. All right. Next, we have Johnny, and the timer is yours.
Cheers. Thank you. I think Phil made some great points. I think traffic calming on Hanmore Road won't go amiss. But the Green Party thinking on drugs and crime isn't necessarily the same as the other parties. Why are drug-related crimes happening? What is the seed of crime? We've all been victims. I had my car rifled through one night after forgetting to lock it. They stole trivial things, but it's about the aftermath of that. There has to be a higher policing presence to dissuade those with nefarious intent or those who are behaving antisocially. One thing we have to ask is what can be done to prevent this? Like combating drug taking, combating drug taking as a medical problem, not a criminal one, and getting the people the help that they need to live a drug-free life, thus resolving the drug-related problems. And I think that, you know, this is one thing that the Green Party really do differently to all of the other major parties, where it's not just about pushing more policemen, it's about helping those in need and treating the people who are victims of crime and also the perpetrators of crime as victims as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Johnny. Okay, and Jenny.
Thank you, Shane. So yes, we agree that more can always be done to address these issues. Most property and vehicle theft is related to the drugs trade. Residents may have read in the papers that the police have had a lot of success catching the dealers and taking down local networks and county lines. However, it won't be solved swiftly or easily, and we feel that feedback to residents by the police could be improved so that when we report crime, the police keep us updated. To support local residents, the borough has included a further £100,000 in this year's budget to recruit 2 more community safety patrol officers. This will enable more dedicated resource to specific areas like Chinham. There are also vacancies in our local police force being filled by new recruits as part of the government's pledge to employ 20,000 more officers. Donna Jones, the Conservative candidate for the Police and Crime Commissioner, is very keen to improve the support police give to community speed watch groups in identified areas where speeding is a problem. We also took Donna to talk to residents in North Binfields recently, where she heard about antisocial behaviour, including drug taking, at the multi-use games area. She has committed to address this, if elected, by improving security at the Mugger. So while we believe that some actions are being taken to address these concerns, we must keep up the pressure and use our local strong voice to be heard where it matters and make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Okay, so what can the council do to help Chinham become a more sustainable community, encouraging or facilitating behaviors that reduce our environmental impact? And we are going to start with Johnny.
Thank you. Education, convenience, cost. If you heard the previous hustings over with the Basingstoke Transition Network, you would have heard me using these words during the debate on fly tipping. It's almost the same problem with any waste disposal. We need to make it easy. We need to tell people why they need to do it, and we need to give people an incentive. We should be looking at maybe deposit schemes with Tesco's for Chinham for bottles. We need to make sure that people have readily, easily accessible tips for recycling, and we need to make sure that we're recycling ourselves and just making sure everything's much nicer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. Okay, and next we're going to have Jenny.
Thank you, Shane. So the climate emergency is close to all our hearts, and we are pleased with the county's and the borough's commitment to address climate change and be carbon neutral. The county will move its vehicle fleet to all electric and remove fossil fueled cars altogether. At the borough level, we have installed 11 new electric vehicle charging points in the town centre, and we are now working to install more charging points in residential areas. Moving on to waste, we as a community need to recycle more. The borough will continue their work to improve recycling rates by working with the county council to ensure we can recycle more products. It is important to note we only recycle items for which there is a sustainable market. So no waste from the borough is sent to landfill or overseas for disposal. We have kept weekly household collections, and we send all our household waste to the incinerator, which generates electricity. The borough's emerging East of Basingstoke Natural Environment Management Plan will create a new cycling and walking routes and lead to greener travel and less air pollution in Chinham. Overall, we are great believers in the role parish councils and community associations can play in helping behaviour change, and we will continue to work with them as a team. Thank you, Shane.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. All right, we have Phil up next.
Yeah, thanks. The biggest problem has been Basingstoke and Hampshire have always been behind the 8 ball and never got ahead. When the incinerator was built, it was supposed to provide power and heat for all the houses that were going to be built around Chinham. They failed to come through with that, so there's a whole area of Chinham that could have been provided with a heat solution similar to what happens in New York, but they weren't thinking out of the box and just didn't want to pay the money. Putting in a few charging points throughout the town is not going to cut the mustard, because more and more people want electric cars. Only those that can afford to pay such prices and can afford to put charging points at home have any hope of actually running them efficiently. Now, Basingstoke and Hampshire many years ago helped provide various recycling items for people's homes. It was a good investment, but that went wrong because the green waste that people recycle in their own home came off of the recycling rate and destroyed Basingstoke's recycling rate for many years. If they were to provide funds to help people with recharging points at their own home and at blocks of flats, that would help much more persuade people to pick up electric vehicles.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, and Grant.
Thanks. Climate change emergency, and we get 11 charging points. It's not a very big response, is it? We need to invest a lot more. The Wade site is simply inadequate. We need to be looking for a second site. The incinerator may have been great in its day, but we need to be looking at new technologies. There are companies out there like Powerhouse Energy who are converting plastics into jet fuel, and other companies like Velasys that are looking at how to convert waste into jet fuel, sustainable jet fuel. So we need to be looking at that kind of stuff now. We need to be looking at wind turbines, and there are wind turbines out there that could be fitted into town areas. But I'm going to just indulge myself for a moment on climate change. I think the world is behind this now, and I think even commercial business is behind climate change. I believe that habitat protection has got to be ramped up a little bit, and I think we need to be looking at that. At the end of the Second World War, there were 50 million hedgehogs in this country. We're now down to the last 500,000. And that's all about loss of habitat. We don't get bugs on our windscreen anymore, loss of habitat. We're looking in the Labour Party in Popley and Basingstoke at developing bug corridors. Basingstoke's good at one thing, biodiversity. We've got a biodiversity officer, and we need to build on that very, very strongly. One thing that Basingstoke is good at, I will give them that.
Okay, thank you, Grant. All right, our next question is, the pandemic has brought with it some positive environmental impacts, including reducing the number of people who commute to an office each day. Will you support measures to facilitate flexible and home working across the county for those who have found it beneficial, including those in council offices, as well as to encourage review of further investment in highways and council offices until the long-term changes in behavior are known? And we are going to start with Jenny.
Okay, thank you, Shane. So yes, we support action which will help flexible and home working in the borough. In our new normal, home working and flexible working should be offered when and where this is possible and is what the employee wants. It reduces travel and pollution and improves work-life balances. It is, however, not right for everyone. For some, being with others in a workspace is an important aspect of their daily lives. The borough started a Smarter Ways of Working initiative to explore reducing office space and increase flexible working before the pandemic, which it has since accelerated. The Borough Council already rents out part of its office to the police and is working towards further reducing its office space in the town. Council staff will be fully supported to work flexibly and efficiently at home or in the office. The need to have wide choice for staff was reflected in the borough's staff consultation, where some valued home working and flexibility and others felt it was important for their mental health well-being to be physically working with their colleagues and teams. To support local businesses in Basingstoke, the council recently supported IncuHive to provide temporary joint working spaces and virtual offices in the town. This might be something we could consider for the redeveloped Chinham Shopping Centre to encourage people to work locally rather than travel to London. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, and we have Johnny next. And let me restart the timer.
I don't think I need it. I'm not going to take that long. Don't worry.
Okay.
Absolutely. Working from home is an important step towards a better work-life balance, and it's also greener. I'm lucky. The only member of my household that doesn't understand working at home is the cat. This is why we need to think about flexible office environments. We have the Chinham Shopping Centre on our doorstep. We should think about flexible offices as part of the redevelopment. We're also really lucky to still have our library. We could move to having that as a flexible office space as well. For those of us who are lucky enough to be able to work from home, we still need green spaces to go and the infrastructure to make sure that we're comfortable getting there. We need to be able to make and get doctor's appointments easily and continue funding forward-thinking working from home projects. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Johnny. Okay, and next on the list, we have Grant, and it's yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think this is particularly controversial. I think we all support creative ways of cutting down on commuting and helping people work, get a better sort of work and home life balance. I would make a couple of points. First of all, I'm not sure the new normal is here just yet. If anybody looks at the absolute explosion of traffic in the last couple of weeks, it is still an open question as to how much we're going to go back to our old habits and our old ways of doing things. And I would also say it's really important when we look at these creative ideas and we look at, you know, how to make the office a cheaper place to work and a better place to work, that we do think very carefully about how we protect the services that those office workers provide. Sometimes you can do a better job from your office. Sometimes older, vulnerable people, people with real problems need to see a human face. They need to be able to go to a desk and talk to somebody. I'm a teacher. We've been working in schools throughout lockdown, and we are planning on keeping the best. There are things we've done differently and we're going to keep. There are things that were a nightmare, we're going to bin them. So it's about thinking carefully through it, but at all times we need to make sure that we are protecting the services that these offices provide. And sometimes the best place to do that is at the office, at the traditional workplace. So we need to think it through very carefully.
Okay, thank you. And Philip.
Yeah, I mean, home working is going to be the thing going forward. One of the biggest problems for home workers is some of the companies they work for won't have the required security externally for them to work safely in the current climate of scamming and hacking and other issues that occur. I think it provides an opportunity to free up road space, which means that hopefully we could get a lot of the repairs done and look at other ways of moving people around, particularly if you do have a central hub. Certainly the bus services don't supply what's needed, and not enough people walk. But unless there is some sort of investment helping people to work from home, to provide them with the cybersecurity they need and their companies need, things are going to be difficult for people in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Philip. All right, our next question, our last question actually. Much of the council's work is currently communicated through vague photo opportunities shared on social media or lengthy reports held in dozens of different locations. Emails are often unanswered and consultation responses are ignored. How do you intend to improve communications between the council, councilors, and the electorate in Basingstoke in an honest, timely, and bi-directional way? And we will be starting with Johnny.
Thank you, Shane. I think it's probably one of the hardest ones for me. I've not been a councillor yet. However, working in IT, the use of a ticket system is always a good way of keeping track of things. But surely if things are being unanswered, the best way to deal with it is through an election. I do have some sympathy with the council on this, as it is hard to communicate with people. But we have a working postal system. We could maybe look at some kind of council newsletter that comes out. Many of us have access to the internet. The council needs to move with the times. We need to have an intuitive, updated website. Maybe councillors would benefit from the support tickets, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, so that's the end of the evening. Thank you ever so much for everyone. Thank you for Shane and Louise for hosting this evening. And I just wanted to say, make sure you vote for the Green Party. Thank you ever so much.
All right, thank you, Johnny. All right, and Philip, you are up now.
Yeah, thanks. The biggest problem with communication is it's not done in a way that's listening. I was a public affairs consultant. That's like a public relations consultant, but we actually listen to the answers and feed them back to people, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. The council tends to send out a consultation based on questions they want answered and never ask the public what their questions are and what they would like to have answered. I like in America where they have these town hall meetings. That's a personal face-to-face. You can get to talk and look at someone in the eye, and officers and councillors should be doing more of that, even with technology and social media. Biggest problem with social media is you never know whether you're talking to a robot or not. So communication can be much improved if only people are listened to. And if you have a meeting with people, let them set the agenda, not officers and councillors. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And next we are going to have Jenny.
Thanks, Shay. Okay, the borough and Conservative councillors communicate with residents in multiple ways. The overwhelming feedback the borough receives is that residents love the Basingstoke and Dean Today council newspaper, which is sent to every household in the borough twice a year. The borough has a website which is kept up to date. People can opt into regular email updates and follow the borough's social media. We hold our meetings in public and they can be viewed on YouTube. Residents can speak at meetings and there are regular consultation exercises on a wide range of initiatives and issues, from the budget, how to address climate change, and the future of Basingstoke Town Centre. We do reply to emails and contacts as best we can and aim to ensure all inquiries receive an answer from us or from an officer on our behalf. Sometimes it takes longer than we'd like to find the answers. We always take contacts very seriously and care about supporting people to resolve any issues they may have. The borough's telephone contact centre has a very good system, managing responses times effectively. Questions can also be asked through the borough's Facebook page. As a Conservative team, we always ensure at least one of us attends parish council meetings to help support local activities and to hear views about local issues. We also regularly write articles in the Chinham Chat and the Loddon Valley Link. Suggestions about other ways we can improve communication
that's it, Jenny.
would
Thank
always
you.
be very welcome. Thank you, Shane.
Okay, thank you. All right, and last but not least, we have Graham, and the floor is yours.
Grant.
Grant.
That's no problem. Yeah, a council newspaper comes out twice a year, and just before the election, full of Conservative councillors doing wonderful things. We did notice that. I think the council needs to take a leaf out of Labour's book, because in Basingstoke, every Labour represented ward gets a quarterly newsletter from its councillors. We run regular surgeries, we run surveys, sometimes down to street level. And the communication between Labour councillors and their constituents is really first rate. There's two sides to this, actually. There's the general issues being communicated from residents to the council. And I've already said enough about how weak I think the Conservative administration is on that. There's also addressing specific issues and specific concerns of specific individuals who've got specific problems. And I'm going to take a little bit of a guess here and say that I suspect a lot of that is down to staffing. I suspect we don't have enough officers. We don't have enough people working to address these issues, and things pile up. And that's the way things have been going for quite a few years lately. So I think we've got a complacent council, we've got a complacent government, and the best way to shake them out of their complacency is to vote Labour on May the 6th and give them a little bit of a warning shot across the bows. And thank you very much for organising this. It's been very, very good.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Okay, well, that's all of our questions that we have. Sorry, this was last minute, and thanks everyone for joining us on such short notice. And everyone, we will have this available on YouTube. I'll post the links. A couple of last minute changes. We had some issues with Chinham Community Notice Board. Mark and I will be working on that. But anyway, it was on Friends of Chinham Library, and I'll put the links up on all sites with YouTube. So thanks again for everyone attending, and hope to see you again in the coming years for the next election, and we'll have more time next time. Thank you.